Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillah-r-Rahman-r-Rahim. Welcome to the online sessions of Tariq Schools, Gujarat region. First of all, join your hands for dua. Rabbi zidni ilma, my Lord, increase me in knowledge. Eh mere Rabb, mere ilm mein izafa farma. So class, this is your history lecture and this is your lecture number 7 of chapter number 17, the ancient invaders. In the previous lecture, we have discussed about the lower caste of Aryans and their gods, like to whom they worshipped. And these gods were they used to worship the nature. First of all, they used to worship moon, river, fire, and earth. And then they named their gods as Indra, Vishnu, Shiva, Krishna, and many more like these. And now the Hindu gods of today are still considered Indra, Vishnu, Shiva, and Krishna. The moreover this, in the previous lecture we have discussed about the use of the Sanskrit language in the modern European languages as well. In the Sanskrit language, we have read about the word Deva, that means God, Agni, that means fire, Pita, that means father, and Raja, that means ruler. And in English, the Deva called deity, Agni called ignite, Pita called father or paternal, and Raja is regal or royal. And now in the next lecture we are going to discuss about the page number 81 and 82. In this lecture we are going to discuss about the Persian, Alexander, and the Greeks. First of all, we are discussing about the Persians. First of all, when we know we will see that who were the Persians. Persians, modern day Iran. Persia is the modern day Iran. We usually used to call Iran as Persia. At that time, Persia became a warlike nation in the 6th century BCE. They captured a huge empire which stretched from Greece and Egypt into the west of the northwestern India. Now you can see that in this map that there is an Persian empire in the in the yellow. You can see that the Persian empire is extending from the Greece, and then it extended to the Egypt, and then it is coming to the northwestern Indian side. Now the blue part, in the blue part you can see on the lower right side, you can see the Gulf areas, and below these Gulf areas you can see the Red Sea, Black Sea as well. So the Persia is the modern day Iran and became a warlike nation in the 6th century, and it captured first Greece and Egypt and then the western part of the India. They conquered the Gandhara kingdom and made their capital in the subcontinent at Texla, which later became the center of art and learning. The Persians brought important new ideas how to use money from and new ways of building. They also learned from the Aryans about medicines and how to make good steel, which was extremely expensive and could be made only in a small quantities. Steel was used mainly in by the rich for manufacturing better weapons. The Persian also made good irrigation schemes in the Indus Valley. However, like the empires before them, they too grew weak after some of the years in power. So, in this paragraph, we are discussing about how the Persians conquered the Gandhara kingdom, and then it made the capital of the subcontinent is Texla, that is the north, that is on the that is the ruins of the Texla, and that was at that time it was the Persian Empire. It was under the Persian empires, and it's almost 300 kilometers away from the Islamabad, the right now the capital of the Pakistan. So at that time, the Persian had learned many things from the Aryans. They had many ideas, and later the Texla became the center of art and learning, where the Persian brought new ideas. They tell people about how they can utilize their money, where the people should invest their money, the way of building, the way of architecture, the new ways of building as well. They also learned from the Aryans about the medicine. At that time, medicine was also called Veds, Ayurvedic things that was used by the plants, that was medicine that was used that was made by using the different plants. So they also learned about how to make the good steels, and the good steel at that time was so expensive to make, and that was only made by the in a small quantity and for the better manufacturing weapons. That time, the people, Persian people, knows about the good irrigation system. They applied good irrigation schemes at that time, but after some times of in power, the Persian Empire also getting collapsed, also getting weak in the subcontinent. The next we have the Alexander and the Greeks. In the west, the another new power was building up in the northern Greece. Alexander became the king of Macedon when his father Philip was murdered in 336 BCE before Common Era. He was only 20 years old but had already shown himself to be the brilliant soldier and leader. Alexander was also well educated, and as his father had groomed him thoroughly for kingship. As you all know that at the time of 336, the father of Alexander was murdered, and the name of his father was Philip, and he was the king of the northern Greece at that time in the west. So he at the age of 20, Alexander take over the charge of the whole state, and shown himself as the brilliant and strong soldier and leader. Alexander was well educated, and his father groomed him only for the kingship, through which he gave him the education of the army, how he can lead the people, how he can protect the people as well. He also gave him the education of how to govern the state. Okay, when Alexander died in 13 years later, he had conquered all the Persian Empire from Egypt to what is now Pakistan. Alexander conquered the empire of Egypt that was first conquered by the Persian in a great battle on the river of Jhelum. He defeated Porus, the king of Punjab. At that time, he fought against the Porus, who was the king of Punjab. Porus was captured and taken to the Alexander. At that time, the army of the Alexander arrested Porus and take him to the Alexander, who so admired the king's bravery that he released him and returned his kingdom. At that time, Alexander released him and let him go to his kingdom. Alexander now wanted to march west eastward to what was believed to be the edge of the world. Now he wanted to go to the edge of the world, what people say on the eastward of the subcontinent at that time was considered to be the edge of the world. His soldiers, however, thousands of kilometers from their homes in Greece, refused to obey for the first time. At that time, the people of the Alexander was so great. They were used to be obey him as he was a great soldier and a brilliant person and a brilliant king and very good for their people, very kind and generous personality. So at that time, the soldiers of Alexander, who were far away from their home, far away from their home from Greece, so they refused to go forward. That they don't wanted to go to the edge of the world, so they refused him to go with him. So Alexander was forced to go back to the Persia. So the soldiers at that time forced Alexander to just come back, that we can go back to Persia and then to buy our country. So half of his army crossing the tribal Makran desert and the other half going by the sea. So he divided his army into two halves. One was crossing the terrible Makran desert and the one is crossing by the sea. One is going to the edge of the world by the sea route. So back in Persia, Alexander began to make a fresh plans. He fell sick and died in the age of 33. So at that time when Alexander came back to the Persia, he was starting to make it up that he is going to conquer the other areas and he was going to conquer the many other uh, territories of the world at that time. So at the age of 33 he felt so sick and he died at the age of 33. So his great empire broke into three parts, each ruled by his one of his generals. So at the age of 33, he has no successor at that time. So his army divided his whole parts. His army divided his whole territory, his whole empire, his whole uh, state into three different parts, and each of the part was governed by the general of the army of Alexander. So what you have to do is to create the short question answers of these question and how you can make it. The first page we have discussed is page number 81. You have to write down by what is Persia. So you have to write the answer of the what is Persia was, it's the modern day Iran. So what was the huge uh, what was the huge empire captured by the Persian? They captured a huge empire which was stretched from the Greece, Egypt, and then to the west to the northwestern India. So you have to create the short question like these things. You have to read it between the lines of these two pages and create almost 5 to 6 short question answers. Now you can also ask a question about the good steel and why the good steel was used, and it was mainly used for manufacturing the better weaponry as well. So you have to write down the questions from these two pages as well. So you all know that this is the serious third wave of the COVID-19. So you have to stay at your home, wash your hands with soap and frequently for the 20 seconds after every 2 to 3 hours or half an hour for every visible dirt or invisible dirt. So you have to frequently wash your hands as well. So till then, stay blessed, stay healthy, do your homework, take care of your loved ones, take care of your parents as well. So stay blessed. Fia Manila.